All right, ready to dive deep. Today, it's all about something I bet you use every single day, but probably don't think too much about money.
Hmm. Guilty as charged.
You sent us this Bank of England research paper on money creation, and wow, it's a total game changer.
Definitely eye-opening stuff.
For real, it makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about, like where money even comes from.
Yeah, most people don't give it a second thought.
Right. We all kind of assume, oh, the government prints it, end of story, but this paper blows that whole idea out of the water.
Oh, absolutely.
It turns out the story of money creation is, well, kind of mind-blowing, to be honest. So get ready to have some of those old assumptions challenged.
It's about to get real.
Okay, so first things first. One of the biggest myths out there is that banks just lend out the money that people deposit, right?
Right, like they're just this neutral middleman.
Exactly. But if you think about it, if that were actually true, then the total amount of money in the economy would never change, would it?
It'd be like this fixed pie that just gets sliced up differently.
So where does the new money come from then? That's the million-dollar question.
Well, the key is to understand what actually happens when a bank gives out a loan.
Okay, break it down for us.
It's not just a matter of transferring existing money from point A to point B, like scooping some out of one account and plopping it into another.
So it's more than just moving digits around on a screen.
Way more. What's really happening is the bank is actually creating brand new money out of thin air. Well, not literally thin air, but you get the idea.
Wait, hold on. How can they just create money like that? That sounds kind of shady, like some kind of magic trick.
Not magic, but it can definitely feel that way. Think of it like a fountain pen.
A fountain pen. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So as you write with a fountain pen, it creates a continuous stream of ink, leaving a mark on the page, right?
Right. Makes sense.
In a similar way, when a bank issues a loan, they're not dipping into some pre-existing pile of cash. They're essentially creating new money, kind of like ink flowing from that fountain pen, and that leaves a mark on the economy's big balance sheet.
I love that analogy. Fountain pen money. We should coin that phrase.
It's pretty catchy, right?
All right, so let's say I walk into a bank and want to take out a mortgage to buy a house. Walk me through the fountain pen money creation.
Okay, so picture this. The bank says, "Congratulations, you're approved." But they don't actually go grab a stack of bills from a vault somewhere.
Which is kind of what I always imagined, to be honest.
Nope. Instead, they just credit your account with the loan amount, as if by magic, and bam, a new deposit is born.
So the money just appears in my account. Poof. It does sound like magic.
Well, not magic, but it's definitely a process most of us don't see.
And at the same time, my mortgage becomes an asset on the bank's books, right?
Exactly. They now have this IOU from you.
Okay, so the bank creates this money for me. It shows up in my account, but they still expect me to pay it back, even though they basically just made it up.
It seems a little counterintuitive, I know.
It kind of feels like getting a free lunch, but I know there's no such thing.
The key is to remember that the money the bank created for your mortgage is a liability to them, meaning they owe it back to you in a sense.
But they just like invented it. How can they owe it?
It's not about owing back those specific dollars. It's more about the bank's overall obligation to all of its depositors.
Okay, so they have to make sure they have enough cash on hand to cover any potential withdrawals.
Exactly, it's a balancing act.
This is making my head spin a little, but I'm starting to see how it all fits together.
It's definitely more complex than it seems on the surface.
So if banks can just create money by giving out loans, what's to stop them from going crazy and making like an infinite amount?
That's a great question, and it brings us to the limits of money creation, which we'll get into next time.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. I can't wait to hear what those limits are.
Let's just say it's not a financial free-for-all.
I figured as much. This is already blowing my mind, so I'm ready for more. Okay, so last time we left off on a bit of a cliffhanger, talking about how banks can actually create money when they issue loans.
By the magic of fountain pen money.
Exactly. But you also mentioned there are limits to how much money they can just whip up out of, well, not thin air, but you know what I mean.
It's not a limitless money printing machine.
Before we get into what those limits are, I wanted to touch on something you said earlier about how this Bank of England paper we're looking at focuses on the UK, but the concepts apply globally.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not like UK money works one way and US money works another.
Nope. The fundamental principles of money creation are pretty much universal.
But different countries have different monetary policies, right? So how does that all work together?
Well, that's where things get really interesting because you have all these different economies interacting with each other.
Right, like a giant financial ecosystem.
Exactly, with all these moving parts.
So what happens when, say, one country decides to crank up the money creation while another one hits the brakes.
Well, you can get all sorts of imbalances and unintended consequences.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like a global game of financial tug of war.
It's definitely more complex than just looking at one country in isolation.
Which makes it even more important to understand these concepts, not just for managing our own little personal finances.
Right. It's about understanding the bigger forces at play.
So back to those limits on money creation. What keeps banks from going on a lending spree and flooding the economy with fountain pen money?
Well, there are a few key constraints.
Okay, lay on us.
First and foremost, banks are businesses, right?
Right, they got to make a profit.
Exactly. So they can't just give out loans willy-nilly.
They have to be smart about it.
They need to consider the risks involved.
Like the risk that someone might not pay back their loan.
Exactly. That's credit risk.
And what about having enough cash on hand to cover withdrawals?
That's called liquidity risk, and it's another major concern.
So if everyone suddenly decided to empty their accounts, the bank would be in trouble.
Big trouble. And there are regulations in place to try to mitigate these risks.
Okay, so that's one limit. What else?
Well, another factor is the behavior of all of us, the people who hold and spend money.
So our spending habits actually play a role in this whole money creation thing.
Absolutely. Remember we talked about the reflux theory?
Yeah, where someone takes out a loan and then immediately uses it to pay off another loan.
Right. So in that case, the newly created money essentially vanishes.
Poof, gone.
It's a constant cycle of creation and destruction.
Fascinating.
And then there's the opposite scenario, the hot potato effect.
Where the money keeps circulating.
Exactly. And that can lead to inflation if things get too heated.
Too much money chasing too few goods. Classic Econ 101.
It's a delicate balance.
So it sounds like our collective spending decisions can either amplify or dampen the effects of money creation.
It's like we're all part of this giant financial dance.
Okay, so we've got banks being prudent. We've got the unpredictable behavior of money holders. Is there anything else keeping money creation in check?
Ah, yes, the big kahuna, the central bank.
The puppet masters of the financial world.
They play a crucial role.
But how do they actually influence how much money banks create?
Through the power of interest rates.
Right, the old interest rate lever.
By raising interest rates, they can make it more expensive for banks to borrow money, which in turn makes them less likely to issue loans.
So it's like putting on the brakes.
Exactly. And conversely, by lowering interest rates, they can encourage lending and stimulate the economy.